So as Kavita mentioned, I'm really sort of big on wellness and disease prevention because I used to work at Stanford Hospital and I used to feel very constrained because when people came in, they were too sick for me to really make a difference as a dietitian. And so that's what got me to leave Stanford and then go to Palo Alto Medical Foundation in the early 90s. So I've been there for a long time. And I work very closely with Dr. Ron Sinha. So a lot of what I'm going to tell you today are interventions that we work on together for our patients at Los Altos Clinic. So my background, you already heard about that. What are you going to learn from this talk? I have a lot of information to share in a half-hour slot, so I'm going to zip through this and we'll save the questions for the end. How to fuel your body with optimal nutrition based on current scientific evidence. Learn to choose the healthiest carbs. How to read food labels to make healthier choices, the secret recipe for weight loss, and the importance of activity and exercise. So, I want to start off with a case study because as you see the interventions that I did with this patient, you'll pick up on it as I go through my presentation. So WA is a 67-year-old Asian male patient who was referred to me in October of last year, just 6 months ago, for metabolic syndrome, hypertriglyceridemia, and impaired fasting glucose. So when he came in October, he said, my triglycerides are high, fat in my liver is too high, and my blood sugars are high. In 2004, my triglycerides were almost 500. I want to avoid taking medications. So, as he presented himself, he ate a non-vegetarian diet. I noticed he had excessive carbs in his diet, which is very common. And some of those carbs were rice, raisin bread, cookies, crackers, bread. He ate out pretty often, 7 times a week, drank diet soda daily, a glass of orange juice daily. He snacked usually on dried fruit and energy bars. Canola oil was his primary oil for cooking, and I noticed that he didn't eat a whole lot of vegetables, but he ate a lot of fruit. Exercise. He used to go to the gym 3 times a week, but as he was presenting himself, he said he had just recently stopped exercising because he was having some medical issues with his wife, and he needed to be available to her, so he wasn't taking time out for himself. The only medications or supplements he was on was vitamin D because he had low levels. I don't know how clear this slide is, but I'm going to show you his numbers on the next slide. I just put this up for you to see over here how his triglycerides had historically been running high. If 250, 246, 212, and 263, they were just constantly high for the last several years since even before 2013. His number that was at 500 was in 2004, so he'd been running high numbers for a long time. These are his fasting glucose numbers. It used to be 102, and then when he came to see me, it was 121. And here are his glycemic numbers. His hemoglobin A1C had also been running high for many, many years, and he presented at 6.9 hemoglobin A1C, which is pretty high. His vitamin D, as you can see, was low. So what did I do with him? One of the first things that I tackled was a low-carb diet. Now, when I say low-carb, I want to make sure that I'm making the point that Dr. Ron and I are in no ways trying to do an Atkins-type diet and have you go low carbs. It's relative. If you're eating a lot of carbs, then we want to lower your intake. So the net carbs I advised him and kept him was between 1 to 150 grams a day. He avoided sugary drinks. I told him to skip the diet soda, and I'm going to tell you why as the presentation continues. Asked him to go easy on fruits and fruit juices, replace the high glycemic index cereal that he was eating, which was instant oatmeal, and I had him replace it with steel-cut oats. Limit sugary processed snacks, so no energy bars, no cookies. I discussed healthier snacks that he could use. I've got handouts up front on healthy snacks and healthy breakfast ideas. Eat a balanced diet and follow the plate method. And IF, intermittent fasting. I'm really, really sort of big on this because I've had amazing results personally and with my patients, and encouraged him to get back on an exercise regimen. So what happened here? What were the outcome measures? It was really remarkable. His triglycerides when he came in October 2016 was 222. And fasting blood glucose was 121, A1C 6.9. These are his liver enzymes, 106. So he was showing signs of fatty liver. And his vitamin D was low. So the intervention started. He came back for the first follow-up visit. I noticed his carbs was slowly going down, but he was still eating a pretty high-carb diet. He had his labs checked by the time we had the second follow-up visit, and his triglycerides were slowly inching downwards, 185. Fasting glucose was still high, but look at the rapid shift we saw in his A1C. This was just in 2 months. So since October, November, December, so about three months, we saw that his numbers had started to come down. So now he was at the borderline of the pre-diabetic range. So it's not going to be very long before he just reverses his diabetes. And then the follow-up visits continued. And during these visits, what I want to highlight here is that he took time to make these changes. It didn't happen overnight. He came back and he said, Prerna, I'm not exercising as much as you'd like me to. My carbs are still high. I'm still drinking a diet soda. And so we kept working away as long as he was taking baby steps and moving in the right direction. That was what I was looking for. And then he just came in to see me a couple weeks ago and look at his triglycerides. For the first time ever, he said his triglycerides were back to normal. They're 128. Ron and I like to keep them less than 100, so that's my goal with him. And his A1C's still hovering at 5.7, and his triglycerides, as they go further and his carb intake goes further, we'll definitely see an improvement with his pre-diabetes. Now, as I go through the presentation, you'll pick up on all these interventions that I used with him. So how do we fuel our body? With macronutrients and micronutrients. The macronutrients are the carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Now, in the modern day world, we don't see deficiencies with carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, but we do see a lot of micronutrient deficiencies, and those are vitamins, minerals, and phytonutrients. The phytonutrients are compounds that prevent us from disease. They're usually found in just produce, vegetables, and fruits. So as you look at this picture, these are all your macronutrients, and this is really where you're finding all your micronutrients. So carbohydrates, that's the first one. And these are all the different food groups that come under carbs. All the carbs get broken down into sugar in your body, into glucose. What I want to highlight here are vegetables are your best choice for carbs. Now, as you look at your South Asian diet and you're trying to, and it's pretty carb heavy because our staples are rice and wheat. As you're trying to watch your carbs, I wanted to sort of bring your attention to the glycemic index of foods. It's a system of ranking carbohydrates on a scale according to how fast they raise your blood glucose. This scale runs from 0 to 100, and the high GI foods are over 70. And the low GI foods are less than 55. The high GI foods get absorbed really quickly, and so you see a surge in your blood sugar that is followed by a surge in your insulin, and then there's a very rapid decline in your blood glucose. And I'm going to show that to you in a second. So, but the highlight of the high GI is the surge in both glucose and insulin. All carbohydrates are not created equal, and this is where the GI really will help you plan well. So as you look at the high GI, what I did with my case study, if you remember, is he was eating a lot of instant oatmeal for breakfast. Every day he had instant oatmeal with a big serving of blueberries, and so there was a lot of carbs coming in, and I didn't want to sort of completely revamp his whole diet because the whole point of people coming to see us is we have a very individualized approach. So I will look at how you eat and try and keep it as close as possible to how you like to eat so that it's a plan that really works for you. So we had switched his oatmeal to steel-cut oats, and look at the glycemic index difference there. It went from a high GI to a low GI food, and that in itself started making some really good improvements in his blood parameters. So quinoa is another really good low GI carb. The white rice is high. Sugar, of course, is at 100. But I just want to point out for our South Asian bandhus here that basmati rice actually has a low glycemic index, and it's about 56. So it's pretty close to this range, and it's one of the better carbs. But again, you've got to choose your carbs wisely. So should you choose the quick or the slow carb? The slow carb, because what happens is you get a very gentle rise in your blood sugar. You know, when you see the slow carb, this is what happens with the high GI. Your blood sugar spikes up, and then the insulin brings your blood sugar level down, and usually it's lower than where you started off. So the people start to feel shakes, they get hungry again, and all of a sudden they're reaching out for carbohydrates, and it becomes a cyclical pattern. But the low GI is a very gradual rise and a gradual decline, and you end up at pretty much the same level where your blood sugar was before you ate the food. So it's much easier on your whole metabolic response. So when you're going to choose the high glycemic, you're going to feel hungry sooner because of that dip in your blood sugar, and then you're going to eat more. With the low glycemic foods, you're going to feel full for longer because you're not going to see the blood sugar dip below where you were, and you're going to eat less food. We see this all the time with our patients. Sugar is very addictive. And let's look at the sugar addiction cycles. What really happens is when you eat sugar, you're going to actually keep in mind that it stimulates the neurotransmitters in your brain, the dopamine, the serotonin, which are, they come into play with food addictions and substance addictions. So you have your dopamine gets released as your blood sugar levels start to spike. Dopamine also gets released. And along with that, insulin is then pumped out from your pancreas to manage that elevated blood sugars. Your blood sugar level falls rapidly, and as it falls, you start getting the hunger cravings again, and you get into this pattern. Again, you're hungry, you choose carbohydrates that aren't of a low glycemic index, you get dopamine, insulin, blood sugar drops, you're hungry again, you eat. You get into this really awful pattern. So a lot of times my patients will say, you're telling me to cut down on my sugar, but I'm having diet soda, which is what my case study said. He said, I'm having diet soda, I don't have regular soda, and isn't that okay? So what happens with artificial sweeteners? They're basically synthetic chemicals that still affect your body, even though they have no calories. And even though FDA has approved these 5 artificial sweeteners, I want you to know that they stimulate the taste receptors for sweetness 100 to 1,000 times more powerfully than sugar. They may also cause insulin secretion, driving calories into your fat cells, thereby promoting fat storage and stimulating hunger. So there was a study done, and scientifically I want to sort of share with you. It was called the MESA study, the Multi-Ethnic Study of Atherosclerosis. And they took about almost 7,000 people and of different backgrounds. It was multi-ethnic, so Caucasians, African Americans, Hispanic, Chinese adults. And they investigated the prevalence and progression of cardiovascular disease. The daily diet soda consumption was associated with significantly greater risks for metabolic syndrome and type 2 diabetes. Now, aren't these the conditions that diet soda, that artificial sweeteners were manufactured to prevent? One of the reasons we told people not to eat sugar, and companies started saying, well, have diet products because it's not sugar, so you're not going to get the diabetes and the metabolic syndrome. And as you will see from this slide, it's increasing your risk for the very conditions that they said it was going to avoid. 36% higher risk for metabolic syndrome and 67% higher risk for type 2 diabetes. So it does lead to weight gain, impaired glucose control, and eventually diabetes. Now, we have a very obesogenic food environment, and our kids, of course, are really exposed to it. And we're seeing a whole lot of obesity, type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome, hyperlipidemia in kids, conditions that we never saw before. And as Ron had mentioned, his wife's a pediatrician, and I remember once she was telling us that they didn't even get trained in medical school on how to treat hyperlipidemia in kids or pre-diabetes because they didn't exist. And so we're facing a huge pediatric obesity crisis in America. And what is fueling this crisis? Processed foods, sugary cereals, sugary drinks, fast food, junk food, and large portion sizes. So what you need to do, and I tell all my patients, and that was the case study, the first thing I said to him was reduce your added sugars. So his cookies and the raisin bread and the desserts, diet sodas, immediately advised that he sort of limit that. 1 teaspoon of sugar is 4 grams. So make sure you look at food labels very carefully. And when you see the sugar grams there, you can figure out how many teaspoons of sugar there is in that particular food per serving. Look at the serving size. And the World Health Organization and the American Heart Association has given us some guidelines now for sugar. We never used to have these guidelines. They're saying maximum of 6 teaspoons of added sugars daily. So avoid sugary drinks, and you will see that there's a lot of them on the market. Bubble tea, frappuccinos, fruit smoothies, flavored milks. You want to really, really sort of look at those labels, minimize the amount of sugar you're having. Look at how much sugar is in your drinks. Like I said, look at that food label. 13.5 teaspoons in Monster drink, 8 teaspoons in vitamin water. This is Mountain Dew, almost 20 spoons. This is Snapple, 10.5 spoons. Gatorade, 8.5. And this is the mixed fruit juices, 17.5. Look at the labels. This is a lot of sugar. If your limit is 6 teaspoons per day, look at where you are just with this one drink. I mean, it's not a surprise we've got a very high incidence of diabetes and obesity. Avoid sugary breakfast cereals. Again, look at labels. Honey Smacks is the highest sugar-containing cereal on the market. So make sure you're picking the right cereal for your kids. Apple Jacks, Fruit Loops, and flavored Cheerios. Just really, really be aware this is an extremely high source of sugar in your kid's diet. And as Dr. Ron mentioned, you do not want to start your day, your breakfast meal, with a really high carbohydrate load. And that's exactly what the kids are doing before they leave for school. Not at all a healthy habit. So choose wholesome, unprocessed carbs. This was one of my first interventions and is usually with all of my patients. As you see here, during the milling process, this is how the whole grain of wheat looks like. This is how it ends up once it's been processed. By the time it comes to look like this white flour, it's been bleached, there's been chemicals that have been added to it. Here's what the whole grain bread really should be like, and this is the processed version, and this is really what we're eating these days. I do want to point out that just because you get brown bread, don't think that it's a healthy whole wheat bread. Read the label, because often they'll add caramel coloring and make it look brown just because they're just trying to market their product. So make sure that you are definitely reading the food labels for ingredients. Just because the bread looks brown, it doesn't mean it's a wholesome bread. Pay attention to portion sizes. Look at how much the portion sizes have increased over the years. So the bagel, which used to be this size, is now 4 servings of carbohydrate. The bottles of soda have gone from 8 ounces to 20 ounces. Again, keep the added sugars in mind and really guide your kids to healthier choices. That was for carbohydrates. So what about proteins? If you're eating non-veg, then the first 2 items would be things that you would hopefully be including. Keep in mind that for eggs, Dr. Ron and I recommend pastured eggs. So these are chickens that are running on green grass. They're not being caged and fed grains. And for the meat, fish, poultry, and even actually for all animal products, including dairy, look for the word grass-fed. It makes a huge difference in the antioxidant content of that product, and the fat profile is a lot healthier. So the saturated fat that comes from grass-fed animal products is of a higher quality, and we do not see any detrimental effects when we're advising that to our patients at the clinic. So saturated fat of a higher quality is completely safe. Also in 2014, the US Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee said cholesterol was no longer a nutrient of concern, and so you can have egg yolks, up to 1 or 2 per day are safe. We do not see any detrimental effects of recommending that to our patients. Just make sure that the eggs are pastured. For the vegetarians, your dairy products and nut butters, tofu, tempeh, which is a fermented soy product, lentils and legumes would be your go-to for protein. One of the things I do want to mention here is that for paneer, again, go for the grass-fed. If you can make it at home with grass-fed milk, so much the better. I do that personally. And then same for the yogurt. If you can make it at home with the high-quality ingredients, you're definitely getting a better product. Get your fats straight. So good fats and bad fats. Monounsaturated fats, omega-3s, and saturated fat from grass-fed dairy and animal products are your good fats. The bad fats are the trans fats and the omega-6, which are the vegetable oils, canola, safflower, sunflower. They do cause a lot of inflammation because of the way they've been processed. And so our recommendation is for these fats. For the vegetarians, if you're not eating fish, your omega-3 source would be flaxseed and walnuts. And monounsaturated fats, one thing I recommend to my patients, almost every patient, is avocado. It's a fabulous fat to include in the diet, so do that. So what are some of the healthier cooking oils? As I told you, my case study said he only used canola oil in his cooking. And as I just mentioned, a lot of these vegetable oils are inflammatory. So what you want to do is have the healthier oils that resist oxidation and inflammation when heated. So all the seed-based oils tend to be more processed and less heat stable. You want to use olive oil. It should be extra virgin olive oil, cold pressed. Avocados and avocado oil, nuts, seeds. Another really good oil that I recommend is coconut oil. Get the raw virgin coconut oil, organic raw virgin coconut oil. And the ghee should be grass-fed ghee. Keep in mind, olive oil doesn't have a very high smoke point, so I wouldn't recommend it for high temperature cooking. But what you can use instead would be avocado oil, the grass-fed ghee, or the raw virgin coconut oil. Sources of omega acids, omega-3s I mentioned, what the vegetarians and the non-vegetarians can do. Make sure you're making room for those micronutrients. As I mentioned, in the modern day world, we're not seeing macronutrient deficiencies, we're really seeing micronutrient deficiencies. How many of you in the audience have had your vitamin D checked and been told that you're deficient? I see a lot of hands going up. That's a micronutrient deficiency. So one of the labs that Dr. Ron orders for almost every patient who's at risk is a vitamin D check. And so micronutrients are super duper important. You want to choose vegetables. I say eat the rainbow every day. That's a really good reminder to get every possible color. And make sure that the deeper the color, the higher the intensity, the higher the content of the antioxidant. So the red fruits and vegetables contain the antioxidant lycopene, the purple vegetables and fruits, anthocyanins, carotenoids in orange, and the green ones, of course, chlorophyll. So make sure you're really getting a variety of those phytonutrients and antioxidants. There's something called the ANDI scores. It's the Aggregate Nutrient Density Index, and it rates foods on nutrient density based on the concentration of nutrients, the amount of vitamins and minerals that they contain per calorie. The foods are rated on a scale of 1 to 1,000, and the higher the score, the higher the micronutrient concentration of that food, and so the better it is for you. The highest score possible goes to kale and other leafy greens as well, and the lowest score goes to cola drinks. So here you will see in this slide, you'll see how mustard greens, this is the sarson ka saag, like a lot of South Asians will eat it. That's the mustard greens, collard greens. You'd see that they're pretty high. And so really, really get those greens, get a variety of the vegetables, make sure you're getting your micronutrients to get those phytonutrients so that you have enough antioxidants to stave off chronic disease. Eat more vegetables and fruit. My case study was having 6 to 7 servings of fruits a day, only 2 servings of vegetables. I wanted to flip that. And so I suggested that he go to 6 to 7 servings of vegetables and 1 to 2 servings of fruit. We're always going to recommend you eat more vegetables than fruit. And on a daily basis, at least 1 serving of cruciferous vegetables must be included. They contain a compound called glucosinolate, which is implicated in lowering your risk for cancer. And broccoli, cauliflower, kale, arugula, they come under the cruciferous vegetables. Lab studies have proven that they lower your risk for cancer. So I know Dr. Ron mentioned some healthy food options in his slides. One of them was cauliflower rice, wonderful go-to, and a great way for you to include this. Pick your produce wisely. This is a list put together by the Environmental Working Group. They're on my list at the end as a resource for you, but they really emphasize that you choose organic produce so that you minimize the hormonal exposure. Should you take supplements? I know some of you had asked that question to Dr. Ron as well, and it's a question we get asked a lot, especially when I tell my patients to eat 6 to 7 servings of vegetables. They want to take the easy way out and just, pop a supplement. And my take on it is that eating a healthy, balanced diet will meet the micronutrient needs of most people, unless you're at high risk and have special needs. There is no need for additional supplements. I personally have never taken a vitamin supplement, except, of course, when I was pregnant, but I don't take vitamin supplements. And eat the rainbow to get your vitamins and minerals, and be sure to include healthy fats. The reason I talk about the healthy fats is there are certain vitamins like vitamin A, D, E, and K, which are fat-soluble vitamins. So if you actually don't take in adequate fats, you're not going to absorb those vitamins. And for the last 4 decades, we've been a fat-phobic society here. And we've been telling people to eat low fat, and we're seeing a lot of vitamin D deficiency. And so make sure you bring in those healthy fats that I talked about. Supplements should supplement your diet, not substitute for them. So a healthy plate, again, something that you must have noticed in my intervention for my case study. I recommended the healthy plate method. And what is this? Half the plate should be filled with vegetables. That's your micronutrients right there, phytonutrients, antioxidants. The other half should actually be in 3 segments: proteins, healthy carbs, and healthy fats. And what I want to point out here is if you have the proteins and fats in your diet, then they lower the rise of your blood sugar after the meal. So that, again, is what we want to see. So make sure those healthy fats and proteins are there. There's also research that's done that says that the timing of the carbohydrate makes a difference in your glycemic response, which is the elevation of your blood sugars. So if you start off your meal with your vegetables and then have the proteins and then the fats and then the carbs, you're going to have a much, much better biometric profile. Herbs and spices that lower inflammation: turmeric and ginger, cinnamon, they are wonderful. They've been used in Ayurveda, almost medicinally, to treat a lot of problems. They're wonderful anti-inflammatory agents. Ginger is great for the digestive tract. Just keep in mind with turmeric, you want to have it with black pepper because it significantly increases its bioavailability, and we typically do that in the South Asian cuisine. Best weight loss secret. I had said that there's an approach we use in our clinic, and I know both the speakers have alluded to this before me. Fasting. Intermittent fast. At least twice a week, we recommend our patients do this. We also suggest you eat more fat, the healthy fats, of course. Lower your carbs. Again, this is not a low-carb diet, but relative to how much you're eating, lower the carbs. Follow the plate method. Read food labels carefully. How do you do this intermittent fast? So what you want to do is do a 12-hour fast. So don't eat after dinner till breakfast the next morning, no snack at night. And in the morning, what I recommend is that you do some exercise for 20 to 30 minutes before you break your fast. That's when you're really getting this benefit, because as Ron showed in his slides, you want to empty the liver and muscles of the stored glycogen to create parking spaces for the carbohydrate that's now coming in as you start your day. If you don't have them released and the parking spots are full, the excess carb is going to go to your abdominal area and going to raise your triglycerides. Why should you lower your carbs? The reason is because when you have less carbs and less sugar, you lower your triglycerides. You have a low insulin response when you have less carbs. Less insulin means less fat being driven into your cells, so less weight gain, and you lower your risk for prediabetes, diabetes, and polycystic ovary syndrome. So you're killing 3 birds with 1 stone: heart disease, obesity, and diabetes, just by following that low-carb approach and keeping your insulin levels down. So talking about PCOS, just quick pointers for a healthy lifestyle. Basically, we want these patients to reduce their body fat. So again, lifestyle measures would be exercise and diet. My approach again is lower carbs, like I just explained, to keep that insulin down, and avoid processed foods, refined carbs, choose healthier fats, use that plate method to make sure you've got proteins, healthy fats, few carbs, but mostly vegetables on that plate. Exercise includes strength training so that you're improving your muscle to fat ratio. And that helps with insulin resistance. And achieve and maintain a healthy weight. Even a 5 to 10% drop in body weight has been shown to improve insulin resistance. So, I'm going to skip some of the slides. We're running out of time. But this is I just wanted people to be aware that when you eat, fall for these marketing scams that say eat low calories, they're really replacing fat calories with sugar calories. So watch out for that. Read those food labels carefully. One example is right here. Skippy took out the fat. They added corn syrup, soy protein concentrate, hydrogenated oils, and they only saved 10 calories for us in the process. Is that a good choice then, to skip the regular product? I don't think so, because it really added a lot of unhealthy ingredients. So here, if you see this, it says here 180 calories in the low fat and 170 in the other ones. It really doesn't make much of a difference. There's a new label coming out. The current new food label is about 20 years old. In 2018, we're going to have the label have a new look. What I want to point here is something really, really beneficial to consumers. Added sugars. Added sugars are finally being put on the label. So look at the added sugars, because foods naturally contain sugars. For instance, a glass of milk has about 12 grams of carbohydrate. That's lactose, the natural milk sugar. You can't get away from that. But you don't want to have chocolate milk because that has added sugars. So this will help you really see the difference there. Identify unhealthy ingredients. I've got some healthy breakfast suggestions. I know Dr. Ron went over some of these as well. You can talk to me after the presentation if you want some more ideas. Healthy lunch and dinner suggestions. Healthy snack suggestions. I do recommend exercise, both strength training, again, like I said, to improve the fat to muscle ratio and help insulin resistance, and do your cardio workout. I hope you enjoyed the Bollywood workout we did. Some of those stretches and movements can be done at home. You don't need to join a gym. You can do them at your desk at work, and get those walking steps in. My case study basically walked over 10,000 steps a day. That was his primary exercise. He lost 24 pounds in the last 6 months. And his blood parameters, as you see, have all come down just amazingly. So choose your carbs wisely. In summary, limit processed foods. Avoid additives like artificial sweeteners and colors and preservatives, also hormones in foods. So try and choose organic whenever you can, especially with produce. Eat an anti-inflammatory diet. Use things like turmeric, ginger to lower that inflammation. And you don't need to count calories. Low-cal foods are the biggest culprits. Make a habit of reading food labels. Just look at that ingredient list in fine print. Just again, emphasizing this wonderful retreat that Dr. Ron and I will be doing at the end of July, where we're going to give you a lot of practical hands-on suggestions, cooking demos. There'll be a lot of fun ways for you to be able to put all the theory into practice. And resources, Dr. Ron's book, I always sort of tell all the people I meet that I think every South Asian household should have a Bhagavad Gita and Dr. Ron's book, because they're two of the most amazing resources to get you through. And then this is the EWG food score. You can download this on your app and use it to shop wisely. And any questions?
So, Prerna, great talk. Thank you so much for that. We possibly can squeeze one question in. Please give her a big round of applause. If you have follow-up questions, I would urge you to talk to Prerna ji offline at her desk. There will be a booth where she will be at, so you can actually talk to her there. But any really quick question, because we're running behind schedule and we really need to get this. One person, Anna ji, I'm going to make her the bad guy, so she'll decide who it goes to.
Hi, Prerna.
Hi there.
How do I know when to stop eating?
How do we know when to stop eating?
Yeah, I mean,
Great question, Prashant. I know Prashant, and so he must have chuckled when I said every house should have a Bhagavad Gita, because he's part of my spiritual community. But how do you know when to stop eating? So, I feel people should get in tune with intuitive eating, and that's going to happen if you're getting enough rest and you're managing your stress well and your hormone levels start stabilizing. Then the hunger hormone ghrelin and the fullness hormone leptin will start stabilizing, and you'll be able to really get those internal cues. In the meantime, some things that are really practical, if you feel that you're craving food a lot, watch to see if you're eating a lot of those high GI foods, because that's when you get into that sugar craving cycle and you're craving carbohydrates. Personally, I find that eating a lot of healthy fats is my way to keep my hunger pangs at bay. So I eat a lot of avocados and nuts, and I'm a vegetarian. And so the healthy fats and the grass-fed dairy products are a big part of my personal diet.
Thank you so much, Prerna. And